The morning of May 28th, 2024 was unusually clear for Milan. The sun's rays, breaking through the light haze of smog, painted the skyscrapers of the financial district in golden colors. At this hour, the streets were already bustling with life. Elegant Milanese were rushing to work, tourists were admiring the windows of fashionable boutiques, and in the many cafes, baristas were masterfully preparing espresso for their regular customers. Amidst all this bustle, the majestic glass and steel building, the headquarters of Rossi Enterprises, a multi-billion-dollar empire in the world of fashion and technology, stood out. Its history began over 60 years ago when Antonio Rossi, a talented tailor from a small town in Tuscany, came to Milan with a dream and a suitcase full of ideas. Today, Rossi Enterprises was more than just a fashion house. It was a conglomerate combining high fashion, innovative technology, and sustainability. On the 42nd floor of this building, in a spacious office with panoramic windows overlooking the Duomo, Alessandra Rossi was preparing for another meeting. A slender brunette of 28 with brown eyes that radiated intelligence and determination, she was the epitome of elegance and strength. Her impeccable Rossi couture suit emphasized her status and taste, and her every gesture revealed a person accustomed to responsibility and attention. Alessandra grew up in a world of high fashion and big money, but she never let it define her. From childhood, she knew that one day she would be the head of the family business, and she prepared for it with all seriousness. After earning her MBA from the prestigious INSEAD Business School, she didn't go straight into the family company, but spent 3 years working at various startups. This experience gave her a fresh perspective on business and innovation, which she now brings to Rossi Enterprises. Today was a special day. Alessandra felt it from the moment she woke up in her luxurious apartment on Via Monte Napoleone this morning. Something was in the air, some premonition of change. She couldn't say exactly what it was, but her intuition, honed by years in business, rarely failed her. The meeting went well. Alessandra presented her plan to integrate new technologies into clothing production, which would reduce waste and make the process more environmentally friendly. Her ideas were met with enthusiasm, especially by the young designers who saw her as a leader of the new generation. When the meeting was over and Alessandra was about to return to her office, she was stopped by her father's secretary. "Signorina Rossi, your father would like to see you in his office," she said with a slight smile. Alessandra nodded and headed for the elevator. The office of her father, Giovanni Rossi, was on the very top floor of the building. As the elevator went up, she mentally went over possible reasons for this call. Perhaps her father wanted to discuss her latest project, or perhaps it would be about an upcoming fashion show in Paris. When the elevator doors opened, Alessandra stood still for a moment, admiring the view from the panoramic windows of the reception area. Milan lay at her feet, majestic and beautiful, the city that had been home to her family for 3 generations. Her father's secretary, Maria, who had been with the company for over 30 years, smiled warmly at Alessandra. "He's expecting you, dear. Come in." Alessandra took a deep breath and opened the door to her father's office. Giovanni Rossi, a tall man in his 65 with gray hair and penetrating blue eyes, stood at the window looking out over the city. When he heard the door open, he turned and smiled at his daughter. "Alessandra, come in, come in. I have news for you." Alessandra kissed her father on the cheek and sat down in one of the comfortable chairs in front of his desk. Giovanni didn't sit at the desk, but lowered himself into the chair next to his daughter, which was unusual and only heightened her sense that something important was going to happen today. "Alessandra, darling," Giovanni began, looking at his daughter with pride, "I've watched you for the past 2 years, seen how you work, how you make decisions, how you inspire the people around you. You've exceeded my expectations." Alessandra felt her heart beat faster. She knew her father wasn't prone to empty praise. "Thank you, Papa. I try to live up to the trust of my family and the company." Giovanni nodded. "And you more than justify it. That's why I made the decision I did. The time has come, Alessandra. You are ready to take over the company." Those words echoed in Alessandra's ears. She had spent years preparing for this moment, but the reality was overwhelming. The company founded by her grandfather in 1960 was now passing into her hands. "Dad, I don't know what to say. It's a great honor and responsibility." Giovanni took his daughter's hand. "You can do this, Alessandra. You have everything you need: knowledge, experience, vision. But most importantly, you have heart. You love this company as much as your grandfather loved it, as I love it." Alessandra felt tears come to her eyes. She remembered her grandfather, Antonio, his stories of the early days of the company, the hardships and triumphs. She remembered her father teaching her to read financial reports when she was only 10 years old. The entire history of their family, all the hopes and dreams now rested on her shoulders. "When do we announce it?" she asked, trying to gather her thoughts. "There will be a press conference next week, but tonight we'll gather family and closest friends to celebrate. I've already called your mom. She's organizing dinner." Alessandra nodded, her thoughts already racing ahead, planning what would need to be done first in her new position. But there was one question she had to ask. "Dad, what about you? What are you going to do?" Giovanni laughed. "Oh, don't worry about me. I'll stay on the board, help you with advice when you ask. But mostly, I think it's time to finally tackle that vineyard in Tuscany I've been dreaming of for the last 20 years. Alessandra smiled as she pictured her father tending the vines. It was so different from the image of the tough businessman he'd been for most of her life. "You deserve it, Dad. I promise I'll do everything I can to make you proud of me and the company." "I'm already proud, darling. More than you can imagine." They hugged, and in that moment Alessandra felt the weight of responsibility and pride in her family and their legacy fill her heart. Walking out of her father's office, Alessandra paused in the reception area for a moment, trying to comprehend what had happened. Maria, noticing her condition, came over and silently shook her hand, understanding and support in her eyes. Alessandra returned to her office and called her fiancé, Marco Conti. Marco, a young technology entrepreneur, was her pillar and support in everything. "Marco, you won't believe what just happened," she began as soon as he answered. Upon hearing the news, Marco was ecstatic. "Alessandra, this is amazing. I always knew this day would come, but I never expected it to be so soon. We have to celebrate." His enthusiasm was infectious, and Alessandra felt her own excitement growing. "Dad is organizing a family dinner tonight. Will you be able to come?" "Of course. I'll cancel all appointments. This is more important than anything else." After talking to Marco, Alessandra thought for a moment. There was one more person she wanted to break the news to before the official announcement. She dialed the number of her best friend, Sofia Bianchi. Sofia and Alessandra had been inseparable since university. Even though their careers had taken different paths, Sofia had chosen journalism. They had remained close. Sofia was someone Alessandra could confide her deepest thoughts and fears to. "Sofia, do you have a moment?" "For you, always, Ale. What's wrong? You sound worried." Alessandra took a deep breath and told her friend about the conversation with her father. Sofia listened without interrupting and then burst into joyful exclamations. "Ale, this is incredible. You deserve this. No one has worked harder than you. Oh, I can already see the headlines. Young Heiress takes the reins of legendary fashion empire. It's going to be a sensation." Alessandra laughed. "Sofia, you can't write about it yet. The official announcement will be next week." Of course. My journalistic flair sometimes takes over common sense. But seriously, Ale, I'm so proud of you." "Thank you, Sofia. Your support means so much to me. Are you coming to the family dinner tonight? Dad said it's okay to invite close friends. I'd love to, but I have an interview with a startup guy. They say he has revolutionary ideas for eco-friendly fashion. It had been a week since her father had announced her appointment as CEO of Rossi Enterprises, and every day had been filled with endless meetings, interviews, and strategy sessions. She got out of bed, trying not to wake Marco, who was sleeping peacefully beside her. Walking to the window, Alessandra took a moment to admire the view of the waking city. The first rays of the sun were already coloring the sky a soft pink, promising another hot day. Alessandra took a quick shower and dressed in a strict but elegant suit from the latest Rossi collection. Today, she had an important meeting scheduled with the board of directors where she was to present her vision for the future of the company. When she came out of the bedroom, Marco was already in the kitchen making coffee. "Good morning, mia cara," he smiled as he handed her a cup of espresso. "Ready for the big day?" Alessandra gratefully accepted the coffee and kissed Marco on the cheek. "As ready as you can be. Thank you for your support, my love." "Always," Marco replied, looking at her fondly. "You'll get through this, Ale. You were born for this." His words gave her confidence, and Alessandra felt the tension release a little. She ate a quick breakfast, and after kissing Marco once more, she headed to the office. The day flew by like a blur. The meeting with the board of directors had been a success. Her ideas about merging traditional fashion with innovative technology had been received with enthusiasm. This was followed by a series of interviews with leading fashion publications, where Alessandra confidently answered questions about the future of the company and her vision for the fashion industry. It was well past noon when Alessandra was finally able to return to her office. She sank into her chair, feeling pleasantly tired, and closed her eyes for a moment. Suddenly, her musings were interrupted by the ringing of her phone. The name Sofia Bianchi popped up on the screen. "Sophia, it's so good to hear from you," Alessandra answered, feeling a smile spread across her face. "Ale, I finally got through to you. You must be awfully busy with your new position." "Yeah, it's been a crazy week, but I'm not complaining. It's exactly what I dreamed of." "I'm so proud of you, girlfriend. Listen, I've got some news. Are you sitting down?" Alessandra laughed. "Yes, I'm sitting down. Spill it." "I'm getting married," Sophia exclaimed with such enthusiasm that Alessandra involuntarily moved the phone away from her ear. "What, Sophia? That's amazing. Congratulations. Who's the lucky winner?" "Remember that startup I told you about? Luca Ferri. We started dating after that interview, and lo and behold, he proposed last night." Alessandra felt a slight prick of guilt. She'd been so busy with her own affairs that she hadn't even realized Sophia had a serious boyfriend. "Sophia, I'm so happy for you. Tell me everything. How did he do it?" "Oh, it was so romantic. He took me to dinner at La Pergola. You know, that rooftop restaurant overlooking all of Rome? And then, as we were admiring the sunset, he got down on one knee and, Ale, it was like a fairy tale." Alessandra smiled as she listened to her friend's enthusiastic story. "That sounds perfect, Sophia. I'm so happy for you." "Thank you, Ale. And I have a favor to ask of you." Sophia's voice changed slightly, becoming more serious. "Will you be my best man?" Alessandra felt her heart fill with warmth. "Oh, Sophia, of course. I would be happy to be your best man. It's such an honor." "Really? Oh, Ale, I was so afraid you'd say no because of your busyness. You're the best friend anyone could ever dream of." They discussed the details of the upcoming wedding for quite some time. Sophia wanted to have the ceremony as early as the end of August, just 3 months away. "I know it's soon," Sophia said, "but we don't want to wait long. And then Luca says he has an important project starting in September, so August is the perfect time." Alessandra thought for a moment. The end of August would be a very busy time for her. just before Milan Fashion Week, but she couldn't let her best friend down. "Don't worry, Sophia. We'll make it all happen in time. I'll help you with the organization." "Are you sure? I know how busy you are." "Absolutely sure. You've always been there for me when I needed support. Now it's my turn to be there for you." After talking to Sophia, Alessandra leaned back in her chair, feeling a strange mixture of emotions. She was genuinely happy for her friend, but she couldn't shake off a slight sense of unease. Something in Sophia's voice when she spoke of Luca and his project made Alessandra wary. She shook her head, pushing those thoughts away. "You're just being paranoid, Ale," she told herself. "Sophia is happy, and you should be happy for her." That evening, over dinner, Alessandra told Marco about Sophia's engagement and her role as best man. Marco listened to the news with interest. "Luca Ferri, I think I've heard that name. He works in eco-friendly fashion, right?" Alessandra nodded. "Yes, Sophia said something about innovative materials. Maybe that would be useful for our company?" Marco swirled his wine glass thoughtfully. "It could be. But be careful, Ale. There are no coincidences in our world. Perhaps this Luca is not only interested in Sophia, but also in the connections she can provide." Alessandra frowned. "You think he might use Sophia to get to me and the company?" "I'm just saying to be careful. You're not just Alessandra now. You're the CEO of Rossi Enterprises. That's a game changer." Marco's words made Alessandra think. She remembered her strange feeling after her conversation with Sophia. Maybe her intuition was trying to tell her something? "You're right, love. I will be careful. But Sophia is my best friend. I can't just push her away because of suspicion." Marco took her hand. "Of course you won't. Just keep your eyes open. And remember, no matter what happens, I'm always on your side." Alessandra squeezed his hand gratefully. "Thank you, Marco. I don't know what I'd do without you." That night, lying in bed, Alessandra couldn't sleep for a long time. She thought about Sophia, about her upcoming wedding, about her new responsibilities at the company. Life seemed to be gaining momentum, and Alessandra felt like she was teetering on the edge of something big and unknown. Before finally falling asleep, she made a decision. She would be the best man imaginable. She would help Sophia organize the perfect wedding and be happy for her friend. But at the same time, she would be careful and cautious as Marco had advised. The hot days of the early Milan summer were replaced by sweltering weeks of July. Alessandra Rossi was immersed in a whirlwind of wedding preparations, combining them with running the company and planning her own wedding to Marco. Every day was packed to the minute, and Alessandra often wondered how she managed to balance all her commitments. On July 15th, one of the hottest days of the summer, Alessandra met Sophia at the famous Milanese atelier La Sposa di Gianni to try on the bridesmaids' dresses. The mirrored hall of the atelier, filled with luxurious dresses in all shades of white, resembled a fairy tale forest of tulle and silk. Sophia, radiant with happiness, twirled in front of the mirror in yet another wedding dress while Alessandra watched intently, sitting on an elegant sofa with a glass of cool Prosecco in her hand. "What do you think, Ale? Is this the one?" Sophia asked, turning to her friend. Alessandra eyed the dress with a critical eye. The silk dress with the lace top emphasized Sophia's figure perfectly, but something about it didn't seem quite right. "It's beautiful, Sophia, but maybe you should try on a couple other options. You've got 3 more fittings ahead of you. You don't want to rush your choice." Sophia nodded in agreement and disappeared into the fitting room. At that moment, Alessandra's phone vibrated, alerting her to a new message. It was Marco. "How's the fitting going? Don't forget about our investor dinner tonight. Love you." Alessandra smiled and quickly typed a reply. Suddenly, she heard Sophia's muffled voice from the fitting room. It seemed her friend was on the phone with someone. "Yes, I'm with her now." "No, she doesn't suspect anything." Of course I'll figure it out, don't worry. Alessandra frowned. What could this possibly mean? Who was Sophia calling? And what was she supposed to find out? A few minutes later, Sophia emerged from the fitting room, a smile shining on her face, but Alessandra noticed a slight tinge of tension in her friend's eyes. Is everything okay, Sophia? Alessandra asked, watching her friend's reaction carefully. Sophia flinched, clearly not expecting the question. Yeah, of course. Just work stuff, she replied hastily, avoiding Alessandra's direct gaze. Alessandra felt an uneasiness brewing inside her. She remembered Marco's words about being careful. Was he really right? By the way, Ale, Sophia said, changing the subject, I wanted to ask you about the new Rossi collection. Luca mentioned that you plan to use some innovative materials. Alessandra tensed. Information about the new collection was strictly confidential. How could Luca know about her? We're considering different options, she answered cautiously. But it's too early to talk about anything concrete. Why is Luca interested? Sophia shrugged as if the question didn't really matter. Oh, you know he's always up on the latest trends in the industry. Just curious. Alessandra nodded, but the feeling of unease never left her. She remembered how a week ago, during dinner at Il Luogo di Aimo e Nadia, Sophia had persistently questioned her about the latest developments at Rossi Enterprises and her relationship with Marco's company. At the time, Alessandra had written it off as mere curiosity, but now, after the fitting, Alessandra returned to the office, but she couldn't concentrate on her work. Her thoughts kept returning to Sophia's strange behavior and the mysterious phone conversation. In the evening, during dinner with the investors, Alessandra was distracted. Marco cast concerned glances at her several times, but she only smiled weakly in response. When they finally got home, Marco couldn't stand it. Ale, what's wrong? You haven't been yourself all night. Alessandra took a deep breath and told Marco about her suspicions, about Sophia's strange conversation, about her persistent questions about the company, about Luca somehow finding out about the plans for the new collection. Marco listened intently, his face growing more and more serious. Alo, I don't want to say anything bad about your friend, but this looks suspicious. Maybe we should do a little investigating? Alessandra shook her head. No, Marco. Sophia is my best friend. I can't spy on her. Maybe there's a simple explanation for all this. Marco took her hands in his. Beloved, I understand your feelings, but you're not just Alessandra now. You're the CEO of Rossi Enterprises. You have a responsibility to the company, to your employees, to your family's legacy. We can't ignore a possible leak of information. Alessandra felt herself torn by conflicting emotions. On the one hand, Sophia had been her best friend since her university days. They had always trusted each other, shared secrets, and supported each other in times of need. The thought that Sophia might betray her seemed impossible. On the other hand, Alessandra couldn't ignore the facts. Sophia's strange behavior, her persistent questions about the company, the mysterious phone conversation, all added up to a disturbing picture. What do you suggest? She finally asked Marco. Let's start small, he replied. I can have a friend of mine in security do a little background check on Luca Ferri. Nothing illegal, just basic information. His company, finances, connections. It'll give us more context. Alessandra hesitated. The thought of spying on her best friend's fiancé didn't seem right to her. But did she really have a choice? All right, she finally agreed. But let's make a deal. If we don't find anything suspicious, we'll forget about it. I don't want these suspicions to ruin my friendship with Sophia. Marco nodded. Of course, love. We will proceed with caution. Alessandra woke up the next morning with a firm decision. She would not let suspicion poison her friendship with Sophia. She would be careful, but she would not let paranoia take over. Fate, however, seemed to have other plans. When Alessandra arrived at the office, she was in for an unpleasant surprise. One of her key suppliers had suddenly canceled their contract with Rossi Enterprises, moving to a competitor who, as it turned out, had close ties to Luca Ferri's company. It could have been a coincidence, but Alessandra wasn't so sure anymore. She could feel her world beginning to crumble, and the suspicions she had tried so hard to ignore were turning into a real threat. That evening, Alessandra received a message from Sophia. "Ale, darling, could you meet me tomorrow for lunch? I have something important to discuss with you about the wedding, and maybe you could bring some sketches of the new collection with you. I'd love to look at them." Alessandra stared at the phone screen, feeling her heart clench. Until a week ago, she wouldn't have hesitated to say yes. But now, she typed out a reply, feeling each word coming to her with difficulty. "Of course, Sophia, let's get together, but I'm sorry I can't take the sketches. They're strictly confidential." As she sent the message, Alessandra felt a lone tear roll down her cheek. She realized that the point of no return had been passed. Whether her suspicions were justified or not, trust had been shattered. On July 28th, exactly 1 month before Sophia's wedding, Alessandra made a difficult decision. After a long night of reflection and a conversation with Marco, she decided to conduct her own investigation. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Marco asked, looking at Alessandra with concern. She nodded, feeling a lump come up to her throat. "I need to know the truth, Marco, even if it's a truth I won't like." Marco hugged her tightly. "I'm with you, no matter what happens." The next morning, Alessandra called Paolo Mori, her trusted assistant and head of security for Rossi Enterprises, into her office. Paolo had been with the company for over 20 years and was known for his loyalty and discretion. "Paolo, I have a delicate assignment for you," Alessandra began when they were alone in her office. Paolo nodded, his face remaining unperturbed. "I'm listening, Signorina Rossi." Alessandra took a deep breath. "I need you to conduct a thorough audit of Luca Ferri and his company. I want to know everything: financial transactions, business connections, personal contacts. I'm especially interested in any possible ties to our competitors." Paolo raised an eyebrow but showed no other signs of surprise. "This is the fiancée of your friend, Signorina Bianchi, is it not?" Alessandra nodded, feeling a prick of guilt. "Yes, it is, and I want this investigation to remain strictly confidential. No one but you and I and Signor Conti must know about it." "I understand," Paolo replied. "I will attend to it at once. When do you want the results?" "The sooner the better, but be careful, Paolo. No one must suspect that we are investigating." Paolo nodded and left the office. Alessandra sank into a chair, feeling devastated. She never thought she would have to spy on her best friend. The next 3 days were filled with anxious anticipation. Alessandra tried to focus on her work, but her thoughts kept returning to the investigation. She tried to act normal in her interactions with Sophia, discussing the details of the upcoming wedding and helping with the organization, but every conversation now seemed fake to her. On the 3rd day, late in the afternoon, as Alessandra was about to leave the office, Paolo knocked on the door. "Signorina Rossi, I have the results of the investigation," he said, entering the office with a folder in his hands. Alessandra felt her heart beat faster. "Come in, Paolo. Tell me everything." Paolo sat down across from her and opened the folder. "The results are disturbing, Signorina. Luca Ferri's company, Eco Fashion Tech, appears at first glance to be a successful startup in the field of eco-friendly fashion, but a deeper analysis reveals that most of their funding comes from offshore accounts belonging to our main competitor, Moda Futuro." Alessandra felt the blood rush from her face. "Moda Futuro, but that's—" "Yes, Signorina. The company that recently poached our key supplier," Paolo confirmed. "What else?" Alessandra asked, feeling the anxiety building inside her. Paolo turned a page in his report. We discovered a series of transfers from Luca's company accounts to an offshore account linked to Signorina Bianchi. The amounts are significant, totaling over €500,000 in the last 6 months. Alessandra felt her breath catch. Sofia was receiving money from Luca. But why? That is not all, Signorina, Paolo continued. We've also discovered that Signorina Bianchi recently gained access to several confidential Rossi Enterprises documents. These mainly concern plans for a new collection and the company's development strategy for the next 5 years. Alessandra felt nausea rise to her throat. How is that possible? Sofia doesn't have access to those documents. Paolo looked confused. It appears that access was gained through your personal account, Signorina Rossi. Perhaps Signorina Bianchi somehow learned your password. Alessandra closed her eyes, trying to cope with the rush of emotions. She remembered how a few weeks ago Sofia had asked for her phone to make a call when her own had gone dead. Had it really been then? There's something else, Paolo said, interrupting her thoughts. We found drafts of Signorina Bianchi's articles containing confidential information about Rossi Enterprises and Signor Conti's company. This information could only have come from an insider. Alessandra felt her world crumbling. Everything indicated that Sofia, her best friend, had betrayed her trust. "Thank you, Paolo," she said quietly. "You are free to go, and remember, this is all to remain strictly confidential." When Paolo left, Alessandra sat motionless for a long time, staring out the window at the nighttime Milan. She felt devastated and betrayed. How could Sofia do this to her, after all they had been through together? Suddenly her phone vibrated. It was a message from Sofia. "Ale, darling, could you come over to my place tomorrow? I have something important to discuss with you about the wedding, and maybe we could see the sketches of your new collection. I'd love to give my opinion." Alessandra stared at the screen, feeling the anger building up inside her. Now she saw the true purpose of this request. Sofia wanted access to confidential information about the new collection. Bona started to type a reply but stopped. No, she couldn't just accost Sofia over the phone. She needed to look her friend in the eye, hear her explanation. Maybe there was still some reasonable explanation for all of this? "Okay, Sofia, let's meet tomorrow at your place. Would noon be okay?" she wrote at last. The reply came almost instantly. "Great, I'm waiting for you, darling." Alessandra put the phone away and looked at her watch. It was past midnight. She knew she wouldn't be able to sleep until she talked to Marco. When she arrived home, she found Marco in their home office. He was working on some project, but when he saw the look on Alessandra's face, he immediately put things on hold. "What's wrong, love?" he asked anxiously. Alessandra told him everything she had learned from Paolo. With each word, Marco's face grew more somber. "I told you to be careful," he said when Alessandra finished her story. "What are you going to do?" "I'm meeting with her tomorrow," Alessandra replied. "I have to hear her explanation, Marco. Gotta give her a chance." Marco shook his head. "Ale, this could be dangerous. What if it's a trap?" "I'll be careful," Alessandra assured him. "But I have to do this. Sofia has been my best friend for so many years. I have to get the truth out of her mouth." Marco looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, but I'll be nearby, just in case." Alessandra squeezed his hand gratefully. "Thank you, love. I don't know what I'd do without you." That night, Alessandra hardly slept at all. She went over and over in her head all the moments she'd spent with Sofia, trying to find signs she might have missed. How could her best friend turn out to be a traitor? Morning came all too quickly. Alessandra got up at first light feeling drained and stressed. She knew this day would change everything. No matter what the truth was, nothing would ever be the same again. Getting dressed, she chose a strict business suit, a sort of armor before the upcoming confrontation. Before going out, she took another look at herself in the mirror. Pale face, determined look. She was ready to face the truth, no matter how bitter it might be. Good luck, love, Marco said, kissing her goodbye. Remember, I'm always on your side. The midday sun was scorching the streets of Milan mercilessly as Alessandra Rossi parked her car outside Sophia's house. She sat in the car for several minutes, gathering her thoughts and strength for the upcoming confrontation. Her heart was beating so hard that it felt like it was about to jump out of her chest. Finally, taking a deep breath, Alessandra got out of the car and headed for the front door. Every step was difficult, as if she were walking on quicksand rather than on the sidewalk. Sophia opened the door almost immediately, as if she'd been waiting behind it. A smile shone on her face, but Alessandra noticed a shadow of worry in her friend's eyes. "Ale, it's so good to see you," Sophia exclaimed, hugging Alessandra. "Come on in, I made your favorite coffee." Alessandra gave a strained smile and followed Sophia into the living room. The room was flooded with sunlight, with 2 cups of flavored coffee and a plate of cookies on the coffee table. Everything looked so ordinary, so homely, that for a moment Alessandra doubted her suspicions. "So," Sophia began as they sat down, "I wanted to discuss something with you about the wedding. But first, maybe you could show me the sketches of the new collection. I'm so excited." Alessandra felt everything inside her clench. This was it, the moment of truth. "Sophia," she said quietly but firmly, "I didn't bring the sketches, and I think you know why." The smile slowly slid off Sophia's face. "What are you talking about, Ale?" Alessandra took a deep breath. "I know everything, Sophia, about your ties to Moda Futuro, about the money you're getting from Luca, about the fact that you accessed our company's confidential documents. I know you used our friendship to spy on Rossi Enterprises." For a moment, a heavy silence hung in the room. Sophia looked at Alessandra with wide eyes, her face pale. "Ale, I can explain," she began in a trembling voice. "Really?" Alessandra grinned bitterly. "Then explain it to me, Sophia. Explain how my best friend could betray me like this." Sophia lowered her eyes, her shoulders slumped. When she looked up again, Alessandra saw a mixture of guilt and determination in her gaze. "You're right, Ale," Sophia said quietly. "I did take advantage of our friendship, but not in the way you think." Alessandra frowned. "What do you mean?" Sophia took a deep breath. "I'm a journalist, Ale, and for the last 6 months I've been working on a big investigation about corruption in the fashion industry. Moda Futuro, Luca, even my upcoming wedding. It was all part of my cover-up." Alessandra felt herself getting dizzy. "What, but why?" "Because I've uncovered more than just industrial espionage," Sophia replied. "It's about a massive money laundering scheme involving several of Italy's major fashion houses, and I was afraid that Rossi Enterprises might be involved as well." Alessandra felt a wave of anger rising inside her. "You thought my family, my company might be involved in criminal activity, and instead of talking to me, you decided to spy on us." Sophia shook her head. "I couldn't take that risk, Ale. If Rossi was really involved and you knew about it, I would have jeopardized the entire investigation. And if you didn't know, I would have put you in danger." Alessandra stood up, feeling overwhelmed with emotion. "And what have you discovered, Sophia? Is my company really involved in this scheme?" "No," Sophia answered firmly. "All the documents I've seen show that Rossi Enterprises is clean. That's why I was so insistent in asking to see the designs for the new collection. I wanted to make sure I had all the proof of your innocence before I published the article." Alessandra felt a lump come up to her throat. Relief that the company wasn't involved in any crimes was mixed with the pain of Sophia's betrayal. Sophia stood up and walked over to Alessandra. "I wanted to, Ale. Every day I fought the urge to tell you everything, but I couldn't risk the investigation. There was too much at stake." At that moment, the front door swung open and Luca Ferri burst into the room, followed by Marco. "Sophia, We have to leave. The police. Luca stopped mid-sentence when he saw Alessandra. What's going on here? Marco asked, shifting his gaze from Alessandra to Sofia and Luca. Sofia quickly stepped forward. Luca, everything is fine. I just explained everything to Alessandra. Luca frowned. Are you sure it's safe? Yes, Sofia replied firmly. Alessandra isn't involved. Rossi Enterprises is clean. Marco walked over to Alessandra and put his arm around her shoulders. Can someone explain to me what's going on here? Alessandra took a deep breath and briefly recounted to Marco what she had learned from Sofia. As she told her story, Marco's face grew more and more serious. So the wedding, that was a cover-up too? He asked, looking at Luca and Sofia. Luca nodded. Yes. Sofia and I are fellow journalists. We've been working on this investigation together for the past 2 years. But it's over now, Sofia said. We've gathered all the evidence we need. The article will come out tomorrow morning. Alessandra felt dizzy with all this information. So now what? She asked quietly. Sofia looked at her with sadness and hope. Now it's up to you, Ale. I know I betrayed your trust, and I understand if you don't want anything to do with me anymore. But I hope that one day you can forgive me. Alessandra was silent for a long time, trying to deal with the storm of emotions inside. Finally, she raised her eyes to Sofia. I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust you completely again, Sofia, but I understand why you did what you did. You tried to protect me and my company, even if the methods were questionable. Sofia nodded, her eyes filling with tears. I understand, Ale, and I'm grateful even for that. At that moment, Luca's cell phone rang. He answered it quickly, and his face grew serious. We have to go, he said, ending the call. The police have started making arrests. We need to be in the newsroom when the storm hits. Sofia nodded and turned to Alessandra. Ale, I know I don't have the right to ask, but Rossi Enterprises may be under attack when the article comes out. Not because you're implicated, but because many of your partners will be implicated. You need to be prepared. Alessandra felt Marco tense beside her. She knew he was thinking the same thing she was. The potential damage to the company, the need for urgent action. Thanks for the warning, she said dryly. Sofia nodded and headed for the door. But before she stepped out, she turned around. Ale, I know I probably don't have the right to do this, but I still consider you my best friend. And I hope that one day we can get past this. With those words, Sofia and Luca walked away, leaving Alessandra and Marco alone in the silence of the apartment.